Hey guys, this is RFB Aviation coming back to you with another video of Kepler International Airport. This is the first video or the second video of the airport on the channel. I've changed some things around. I lowered landside. I bridged the two tables together, and then I added like a Port Authority sort of section, which is from the GSE parking all the way to the edge of the layout. And then the terminal has since been moved. And then parking would be below the actual tarmac or apron area. And then it's still a single runway setup. The hangar was also moved to the other side. FBO was moved. Cargo was moved. The main terminal road was moved up. There's also another bridge connecting it to the FBO cargo area. And then this is the detailed view of the Port Authority area. Here is the units. This unit is driving out to do some patrol work for the Port Authority. There's another there's a golf cart unit just in here. It'll go out occasionally just to like do some sprint checks and like make sure everything's working right, but it won't go out too much. You won't see it too much. Here's the detailed GSE, a detailed view of GSE, the GSE parking. This is the baggage loaders. This is the baggage tugs. We have a loader going out for the cargo terminal. This is the ground power units. Hangar, taxiway. The airport's obviously pretty busy. For what it's worth, noting there is a couple flights getting loaded up. 2 last bags. Both remote stands are pretty much occupied for the part that they play. Remote stands play a very important role at airports, making sure planes who aren't able to depart immediately have somewhere to park instead of just parking anywhere. Then of course you have the perimeter fencing, which is a must-have to make sure landside, airside are separate. And then obviously the bridge work that I did, looking good. And then landside looks pretty bare, but I might get a hotel, probably a parking garage in. But yeah, let's start the update. We're gonna start on the bridge area on taxiway Alpha. Here is an taxiing in after its arrival from Christchurch is an Air New Zealand. Boeing 7879. It arrived in from Christchurch as Air New Zealand 9140 on a seasonal flight. It will be headed back out to Christchurch as Air New Zealand 9140. And then it will come back tomorrow for Auckland. Summers, it switches between Auckland and Christchurch. Here is a custom model, Level Airlines Airbus A330-200, arrived in from Madrid, Barajas International Airport as Level Airlines Flight 942, and will be headed back out to Madrid as Level Airlines Flight 643. It is just now crossing the bridge on taxiway Alpha, headed to Bravo from Charlie. I just listed the whole operation it's doing. Anyway, here, taxiing out for departure as well, is a WestJet Airbus or Boeing 737-700, arrived in from Calgary as WestJet Flight 461, and will be headed back out there as WestJet Flight 462. Here, parked at the remote stand, is a LOT Polish Airlines, arrived in from Warsaw, Poland today, about 4 hours ago, as LOT Polish Flight 1141, and will be headed back out to Warsaw as LOT Polish 8121. Here is a British Airways Boeing 787-9, arrived in from Birmingham, England, as British Airways Flight 8121, as of 2 hours ago. It's just parked at the remote stand because it's awaiting a unit to come down from Port Authority and do some maintenance checks, make sure it's not broken, because it did come in with some problems with the rudder blade on the rudder on the right, on the starboard side or right side tail stabilizer fin. So it's going to be getting checked out here pretty soon. Here is a Aer Lingus Airbus A330-200, arrived in from Dublin as Aer Lingus Flight 8140, and will be headed out to Cork as Aer Lingus Flight 4120. It's delayed by a staggering 3 hours and 40 minutes on the Cork rotation because of a technological issue with the jetways. The jetways weren't working, but they got them working. Yeah, it took the jetways 3 hours, and then they had to board, which took an extra hour or 40 minutes, something like that. Right now, they're just doing pre-departure paperwork and waiting on Tower to approve them for departure. as opposed at, this is gate 5, here at gate 4, also delayed, but only by about 15 minutes, as it departed late from Atlanta, about 20 minutes late from Atlanta. So it came 5 minutes early from when we were expecting it to, because of that 20-minute delay from Atlanta. We were expecting it to be 20 minutes delayed on the way in. But anyways, it arrived in from Atlanta as Delta Flight 9420, and will be, or should have been, departed to Detroit. It's an Airbus A321, but it should have been departed to Detroit as Delta Airways 6121. It should have been departed 40 minutes ago, but it's still on at the gate, as we're having a bit of a staff shortage today because of vacation. Staff are taking vacations really quick, which is good, obviously. Productivity will rise when they get back, but anyways, this is 40 minutes delayed from its departure to Detroit as Delta Flight 6140. Here, pulling into gate 3 is a American Airlines Airbus A320, arrived in from Dallas on time as American Flight 8220, and will be headed back out to Dallas as American Flight 642. Here is Novello Airlines Boeing 737-800, arrived in from New York, JFK, or not New York, sorry, Cleveland Hopkins at Novello Flight 8141, and will be headed out. It just pushed back on a on-time departure as Novello Airlines 8140 or I think I said 2141, but it pushed back to Cleveland. It arrived in from, Cleveland. It pushed back at Flight 8141 to Rhode Island TF Green 5 minutes ago. It's waiting for the A320 to pull into the gate it left. Here at gate 2, we can't say the same for this Allegiant. It's delayed by a staggering 5 hours and 16 minutes from its expected departure time of 6:50 or 6:45 a.m. or 4:45 a.m. to Miami. It arrived in. As Allegiant Flight 8220. It arrived in from Los Angeles, actually, as Delta or Allegiant Air 8244. On time at 1:50 a.m. Here We definitely can't say the same for this JetBlue, as it arrived delayed from Boston as JetBlue Flight 824, and will be headed out to Charlotte Douglas as JetBlue Flight 922 on time. Actually ahead of schedule, not on time, ahead by about 20 minutes. It's gonna be pushing back right after this Avello clears the ramp and the Delta pushes back out of gate 4. Crossing the bridge here at the cargo terminal is a UPS Boeing 747. It's blank because it's wet leased, but it's a wet leased UPS 747-8. It arrived in from Beijing just now as UPS 8202, as UPS flight 8202, and will be headed back out as UPS flight 8294. It will be headed to Memphis. Here arrived in from Atlanta is this Delta Airlines A321. It arrived in from Atlanta as Delta Flight 9104. It will be headed back out to Atlanta after it receives freight as Delta Airlines 31. Here arrived in, going to take the JetBlue's spot, is a Viva Airbus A320, arrived in from Ciudad de Mexico as Viva Airbus 8999, and it arrived in from Mexico City. That's what Ciudad de Mexico is. But anyways, it'll be headed back out to Guadalajara as Viva Airbus 809 after 2 hours, that is. Here on the runway is an Air Canada Boeing 787-9, arrived in from Vancouver as Air Canada Flight 99, just landed. We'll go out to Toronto as Delta Airline or Air Canada Flight 100. It just landed. It will go out in about 3 hours time, given that it doesn't get delayed, being that most of the flights today are delayed. This one arrived in on time. Hopefully it can stay on time for the Air Canada. Here, just arrived in, is this Emirates Airbus A380. It arrived in from Dubai. Well, not just arrived in. It arrived in 40 minutes ago, or an hour and 40 minutes ago from Dubai DXB, and will be headed back out to Dubai as Emirates Flight 8292. It arrived in as 8291. Here, is an Etihad Airways Airbus or Boeing 787-9. It arrived in from Abu Dhabi as Etihad 221 and will be headed back out to Abu Dhabi. I'm just adjusting some stuff here. Sorry. will be headed back out to Abu Dhabi at Etihad 291. Here, on takeoff roll, first in line, the Emirates and the Etihad were second and third respectively. I forgot to list that. But first in line is this Aeromexico Boeing 787, arrived in from Mexico City as Aeromexico 8121, and will be headed back out to Mexico City after the Air Canada clears the runway as Aeromexico 4444. Here, arrived in on a charter flight from Dallas, is this Delta Airlines Airbus A321 carrying the soccer team for UTD. It arrived in as Delta Airlines 60 from DFW, and it will be headed out to DFW again as Delta Airlines 61. Alright, that was it for the bigger aircraft. The only aircraft that's fixing to depart right now, nothing around it. As I said, it's fixing to depart, is this Cessna Citation. It arrived in from Destin, Florida today as a vacation flight, and will be headed out on a business leg down to Dallas Executive in Texas. About a 4-hour flight on that one. Other than that, thank you for watching. RFB Aviation, zooming out.